Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome to Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and me, Jim Cunningham.
Okay, I hardly recognize you. Now you have a beard again.
I know, it's very strange. There's 2 times a year where someone requires me to have facial hair. No one likes it, not me, certainly not my wife. The dogs are confused. Every time I walk in the house, they go, hey, oh, is that you under there?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's short-lived. By the middle of next month, the reason for the beard will be over, and I won't shave it off on stage while I'm performing. But boy, as soon as I get home, it's coming off.
Well, I think it looks good. I think it makes it look very distinguished.
Well, it's just what I want.
It does put a couple of years on you.
It really
Otherwise,
does.
You are a baby-faced boy.
I enjoyed this interview the second time as much as I enjoyed it the first time.
Well, that just to alert everybody who hasn't read the description of the episode, we're talking to Jaq Greenspon this time. We're in season 6, episode 9, 609, and I met him via email because he wrote a lovely article about me for the cover of MUM.
Oh,
for
right.
those of you who are in SAM and you don't like saying actual words, you just like letters, MUM and SAM. But I was quite surprised to be the cover story. I thought I was just a little brief thing in there somewhere, but they did a beautiful cover.
It was
photo.
a very nice article.
It was
very
very nice. And he was a delight to talk to, all the way from Lithuania.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, he's had a life going on there.
I guess he does.
Very versatile guy, a writer, screenwriting instructor. He's written on Star Trek: Next Generation.
Hello.
Yes, The New Adventures of Robin Hood. Started in Vegas, trained in filmmaking. He kind of a Renaissance guy, I guess, who had some really interesting things to say about what it means to have magic be part of your life, but not all of your life. And I kicked off my portion of the interview by breaking a key law that I've learned late in life. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break what I call Osmond's Law. Osmond's Law states you never comment on the most obvious thing about a person because they've been commented on their whole life. Richard Osmond being like 6'8" or something, and he doesn't need to be told that he's tall. But I have to ask, name spelling, Jaq? What's going on there?
Yeah, my parents had a sense of humor. The true story is I changed it when I was 17. I couldn't sing or play an instrument, but I really wanted to be in a rock band. And so I became the lyricist and the manager. And what would happen is that when I tried to book the band into various venues, I would give them a business card that had JAQ, and they would go, "Is that French?" And I'd go, "No, just different." And they would remember me.
Okay, second breaking of Osmond's Law. We're talking to you all. You're in Lithuania, which may be as far away as we've gotten interviewing people, because Lithuania is on a line with Paris. I don't know. Paris is, I think, as far as we've gotten interviewing.
Yeah, we're a little bit. To go to Paris, we have to go a little bit west.
All right. Then you're, I think, officially the furthest. Why Lithuania?
Really bad life choices.
Well, I've made bad life choices, but I didn't end up in Lithuania.
Oh, thank your lucky stars. Okay, so the whole story is this. It's funny, when I first got here, the first couple of years that I got here, students would ask me, why are you here? And I would always preface it by saying, how much do you know about the extradition laws in America? And they'd be like, nothing. I'm like, good. Well, then we can continue. The general thing was that, so I spent 16 years in Hollywood. We can get to that, writing TV and movies. When I left Hollywood, I got divorced. I left, moved back to Vegas, and went back to get my master's degree. Now, I finished my bachelor's. I got my master's. My master's is in creative writing. Got a master of fine arts in creative writing. But our program has this international component, which is we need to go and spend 10 to 12 weeks in a foreign language speaking country. But because they're not paying for it, you can do it kind of however you want. So I ended up backpacking through Europe for 11 weeks. I saw 15 countries in 11 weeks in the summer of 2008. And I fell in love with Europe. My first wife was English. She is English. She's not dead as far as I know. And so I'd spent a lot of time in London, and we toured around a little bit. Like we went to Venice. We went to a Greek island once, but I'd never really gone to mainland Europe. And ironically, the thing that kind of tipped it was I was doing an interview for a Magic Magazine article with a Swedish magician named Malin Nielsen, who was a friend of mine. I met her through another magician named Ian Rowland. And so I called her up and I said, listen, I'm doing this article on you, but I want to backpack through Europe. Can I use your house as kind of a base? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And so I used her house as a base and toured all around Europe and just fell in love with Europe, and then decided I kind of wanted to live here. So I got a job, but then I hated the job. But while I was back in Vegas, I'd met a magician who was Lithuanian, and we became good friends. And she said, you should, because I wasn't going to stay. My first job was teaching in Hungary. I taught English in a small farming community in Hungary, and I hated it. And she's like, yep, you need to move to Lithuania. And I said, okay, but I need a job. And her mom happened to be involved in education. So winter of 2010, 2011, like Christmas, New Year's, I came up to Vilnius, which is capital of Lithuania, where she lived. And she had set up a bunch of interviews for me. One of them was the university that I'm at. And that was it. I moved here, and I've been here now for 14 years.
What is the national language of Lithuania?
This is going to sound really weird, but it's Lithuanian.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That would have been my guess. But and do you speak Lithuanian now?
Very, very little.
Okay.
Very little. It is one of the hardest languages to learn in Europe. It is absolutely one of the most difficult languages. My daughter, who is 9, is fluent in both English and Lithuanian, and she's desperate to try to teach me. So she gives me quizzes and things, and stuff.
Wow.
So,
that's amazing.
So your students must then speak English as
They
well.
have to, yeah.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
to speak English in order to get into university. The way the system works here, well, in Europe, the Europe system, it's weird. It's A1 through C2 are the 6 levels. It starts with A1. A1 is your most basic of language.
Undergrad.
I'm actually A1 in Lithuanian. I've taken classes. I've got an A1 certificate. C2, so A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. C2 is native, is native speaking. In order to get into a university here, you need to speak at least B1 English.
Wow.
So I could probably
hey.
get in then.
I don't know that I could.
Yeah, I have a hard time with it.
All right. With that background, and with me no longer breaking any more of Osmond's Law,
Sure.
let's talk about magic a little bit. Can you remember your very first encounter with magic, and what sort of impact did that have on you?
I would say that probably really my first magical experience was at Circus Circus. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, but my grandparents from Canada, my mom's from Canada. They moved to America in the 60s, and my grandparents moved to Vegas. So even before we moved there in 70, we moved there first in 74 and then permanently in 76. We'd still visit. And I absolutely remember going to Circus Circus. I must have been about 6 years old. And have you been to Circus Circus? Do you know?
I have, yes.
Okay. So right, they have the mezzanine where all the games and stuff are. And at that point, they had a girl to gorilla.
Oh, sure. Sangora, the gorilla girl.
And I remember being like on my dad's shoulders, and I remember running over the pit across the mezzanine when that gorilla broke free. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And that was my first real experience with magic. And then later on, I saw Copperfield when he opened for comedian David Brenner
Okay.
Brenner, sure.
Yeah.
at the Riviera.
So when did you start doing magic?
When did I start? At some point, a friend of mine for my birthday, and this has got to be early 90s, took me to the castle to meet my then girlfriend and him. And the three of us went to the castle for my birthday. And I was blown away. And he got us, because I'd always been interested a bit. And he bought the two of us, signed us up for do you know an extension class? I don't even know how to explain it. It's like continuing ed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, an extension class. I thought
Adult
you meant from the
education.
castle.
No, sorry.
Right.
So he signed us up for an extension class in magic. And so he and I every week would go, and do magic. And then he took me for my birthday to the castle. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I made my parents take me to there's a magic shop in Chatsworth. This is in LA. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't very good at it and I didn't know much about it. I went and I picked up Royal Road, as you do. And I picked up at this magic shop, I picked up a copy of whatever the current copy at that point. This is mid 90s. I picked up the current copy of Genie and the current copy of Magic, and I started reading through them. And I'm a big believer that if you want to learn something, go get a job doing it.
I'm glad you didn't want to become a brain surgeon. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you work your way. I wanted to learn how to scuba dive. I got a job running a dive shop, and so I wanted to learn magic. So I figured, okay, the best way to do it is to kind of throw myself in. I saw that Magic magazine was published in Las Vegas, so that wasn't going to do it for me. But Genie magazine at that point was published by Erica Larson. And she lived not far from me. And so I called her up and I said, listen, I was reading your magazine and you really need an editor. And, you need somebody to copy edit for you. Because I don't know what you're doing here, but there's really cool stuff, but it could be much better. And she's like, come on down. And so in 94, 95, I would go to Brookledge and hang out with Erica and Max, who was coming over. And I was teaching Max how to use PageMaker at that time.
Wow.
Because he could read your mind, but he couldn't figure out copy paste. And so that kind of started it. And then I was still interested, kind of fell out a bit when I got married to the first wife. We would go to the castle a couple of times. I'd met a couple of people. I still knew Erica. And it was a fun thing to do. So we'd go. And it wasn't really until I moved back to Vegas when I started hanging out with Amazing Jonathan and with that group that I really started, really kind of approaching it in a more methodical way.
I like the fact that you just pick up the phone and call people. I like that a lot. I think that's a great strategy. If you're listening, pick up the phone and call somebody. That's great.
just don't call me. So at what point, Jaq, did you decide I'm not going to be a professional magician, but I'm just going to honor my passion in other ways?
So you're hanging out with Amazing Jonathan. You're hanging out with, who, by the way, was an amazing magician. A lot of people don't know that. He was phenomenal, but you'd never see it because that wasn't his shtick. But he was working. He was always working on stuff that he would never show. It was never for broadcast. But like you're hanging out with Jonathan, you're hanging out with Lance Burton, you're hanging, with, I can tell you a very funny Johnny Thompson story.
We're wide open for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at the time I was dating a magician, but we'd go over to Pam and Johnny's, and Jeff McBride would be there. It was Paul Vigil, Eugene, Johnny, Pam, me. After dinner, me and Pam would go do the dishes. They're all doing magic, but you're hanging out with this level of people, and I just kind of sit there and go, I'm not that good. I have fun. It's like performing. I'm a great director. I'm a great editor. I'm a good writer. but I'm a great editor. I can look at something and say, this doesn't work. This does work. This is, these are ways to adjust it. I would never, ever be in that category. And so it became much more fun to to hang out and be behind the scenes. I mean, I grew up behind the scenes. I started in theater, professional theater, when I was 9. There was a group called the Rainbow Company in Las Vegas. It's the Rainbow Company Children's Theater, one of the top children's theater groups in America. And we were taught, I was part of the inner circle called the ensemble, which was 7 to 17-year-olds. And we were always taught that it didn't matter what the performance was doing. You know, with the person on stage, it didn't matter what they were doing and how good the performance was if you couldn't see them or hear them.
Yeah, there's some sense to that.
You know? And so it was just as important. If you weren't cast in the show, that's okay. It was, your job was just as important if it was making sure the props were there, if it was doing the lights, if it was, you know, whatever. That's just as important. And so with that background, it never occurred to me that not performing was any type of a detriment. I still like doing fun things. I can, you know, I'm teaching my daughter size 7s, you know, because it's fun and she enjoys it. So yeah, I mean, it was never once you realize that you're never going to be that good, it's easy to step back and say, I can help other people be that good. So.
Did you tell the Johnny Thompson story in there?
No, I'll tell you the Johnny Thompson. So the Johnny Thompson story is this. When I was working at the dive shop and all that, my goal, I thought, oh, this will be good. I can be a scuba instructor and I want to be able to go be a bartender and take a deck of, you know, open a deck of cards and be able to entertain for an hour. That was my dream. And so I ended up buying off of eBay back in 2002. I'd moved out of my apartment. I was all living on my own, and off of eBay, I bought the Michael Amar cups and balls.
One of my faves.
Right. Yeah. The old Houdini, right? You can't consider yourself a magician unless you can do the cups and balls.
Correct.
So I bought myself a set of cups and balls, and I bought the book and the videos and all that, and it sat. And so at one point I went to Johnny and I said, Johnny, will you teach me the cups and balls? And he said, do you have cups? I said, yeah. He's like, do you have balls? I said, well, I'm asking you to teach me. He's like, done. Okay, pal, you got it. But yeah, we used to hang out. We used to take care of their birds. We used to go and, you know, pick them up at the airport. It was fun, you know.
I would love that, but he would have been at the top of my list of magicians to meet. And I never got the opportunity, but wanted to desperately.
He was just so knowledgeable. I mean, one of my favorites was he was telling a story at one point. I don't know if the story has gone around, but I heard him say it. But he was talking about some show. They announce him. You're like, ladies and gentlemen, you know, the great Tom Sony. And he's like, as they're saying it, I realize I forgot to load the birds. And it was a group of magicians, right? And we're all sitting there, and somebody goes, what did you do? And without batting an eye, he goes, about 15 minutes. That's it. That sums up Johnny Thompson in a nutshell.
Yeah. There you go.
You know, you do what you do.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
So what advantages do you think you have being on the amateur side? What enjoyments do you get that you wouldn't have if you're on the other side of that ledger?
It doesn't matter.
I tell you, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if I'm good or bad. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if I fool Penn and Teller, right? Because it's just for fun. And so, yeah, I want to put in the work. I want to do the best I can, but, as opposed to being a writer, right? I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I was a professional writer in Hollywood, writing TV and movies and stuff. And it didn't matter if I felt good or bad. I had to get up and write my pages because that's how I got paid. You know, now my job, right? It matters if I grade homework or not, because that's my job. And if I don't do it, there are consequences. As an amateur, there's no consequences. But for me, it's much more interesting. I like learning. I like the history. I like the stories, and it doesn't matter if I book a gig, you know. When I first moved to Hollywood, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an actor or a writer, and I got headshots done and I was all ready to go. And I moved to LA and I started working, doing other stuff. I was working as a PA on a film. I got a job in a theater. But anyways, in my first couple of weeks, I started working, doing stuff. And I realized I was working at a theater called the Groundlings.
Sure. Oh, yeah,
Um,
boy. That's a
and
good
so
theater to work at.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was the assistant director there for 8.5 years. And I realized hanging out with those actors that I didn't want to be an actor. I just it was, and hanging out with them, I went, I don't want to. They're crazy.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
crazy people.
Certifiable.
I could have
Um,
told
No
you
two ways
that.
about that.
you know, and I had friends that would go on auditions and they'd come in, they come to the theater and they're taking Polaroids of whatever they were wearing that day because they got a call back, but they weren't, or they didn't know if they're going to get a call back, but they didn't know what the director was going to latch on to. And so if they got a call back, they wanted to make sure they knew exactly what they were wearing, how their hair was styled and everything else. And I just went, I want to sit in my pajamas and write stories. And that is, again, right, that to me is more fun.
And you wrote, you wrote a lot of scripts, from science fiction TV to book criticism. You mentioned that you were an editor on Genie magazine. Have you, in your writing, have you used magic principles like, I don't know, deception, misdirection, psychological insight into either your academic teaching or your writing work?
Academic teaching, yeah, I talk about it all the time. One of my academic specialties is comic books. And so when you teach comic book theory, one of the things that you talk about is closure. And the idea, like right now, the idea of closure is you have no idea, and I have no idea if you guys are wearing pants. I assume you're wearing pants
Yeah.
because normally in a situation like this, you would be wearing pants.
Mhm.
But I'm never going to see that. So it's that assumption. And I talk about the fact that this is what magicians do in order to fool you, is they use your perceptions against you. And so when you're writing things, or, if you're looking at comics, or if you're writing stories, you absolutely can use the reader's perception of what they think is going to happen against them to create surprise and misdirection. So I absolutely talk about it there.
So, you and I met when you interviewed me for MUM. I had
Yes.
a wonderful chat along those lines, and I'm certainly not the first person that you've interviewed or observed or had that sort of interaction with. And I'm wondering if there's anyone besides me. We'll just take me off the table because I don't want to embarrass you to that degree. But
Well, okay, Malin. I mentioned Malin before. Malin was really interesting because, like I said, I met her through Ian Rowland. I don't know if you know Ian.
know the
right.
name.
Right. Ian is great. And I met Ian. He was at Magic Live with Malin, and they were dating. And I was writing for Magic, and he comes up to me and he says, she's learned how to make a city disappear. And I was like, that's really interesting. And so I immediately went to Stan and said, you have to do an article on this girl. And he was like, and nothing, right? Nothing. And then, I don't know, about 8-10 months later, people at the castle start talking about her. And this is 2008, 2007. And so then he comes back to me and he goes, so other people are talking about her. We should probably do an article on her. And it was fascinating because I went and literally, I mean, she picked me up at the train station. I'd flown over from Vegas, and I was going to stay with her for a little while. And she picks me up at the train station. We go to her apartment. I got all my backpacks and stuff. And we walk in the door, and she's like, I'm trying to make a goldfish appear. Come look at this. And I'm like, can I take my bag off? And she's like, yeah, ever, just come here. Let's do this. And so because I was with her for a week or so, it was this whole look into her process and who she, as opposed to just having a really cool 2-hour conversation, which is great. And I love those. But with her, there was so much more to explore. And so, yeah, I mean, I got to hang out and watch her creative process and stuff. And she's just, wonderful. So that was very cool.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
This whole season, we are focusing on folks for whom magic is a passion, but is not their means of employment, how they make their living. But I'm wondering, in your view, what is the role that the amateur plays in the future of magic? What responsibilities do amateurs have what is their role within the craft of magic?
Well, I think financial, right? Because I think 90, probably, I've got nothing to back this up, but I would bet that 90% of your trick sales are going to, weekend performers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certainly that idea. I think it's also that they keep you on your toes. I mean, good amateurs. Bad amateurs are the ones that, hey, I know you did that, and we can push those people away. But I think good amateurs keep you on your toes. And I think try like, because I could equate it to writing in that amateur writers help me, right? Reading, having, like with students and stuff, there's fresh perspectives that, again, because there's no consequences, you can come up with the most harebrained ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking, I'm doing an article on a guy named Peter Wood, very nice guy, works out of DC. And we were talking about, he's got a brain trust. And, whenever he's got a new effect, he's got this brain trust. And the idea of the brain trust are people that will help him. And they're people that may not be performing magicians, although some of them are, but they're people that can look at an effect and say, I know how it's done. Let me ask questions that a seasoned professional might not answer, might not ask, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think the idea that somebody that isn't on the grind, that, that's not on the ships 53 weeks a year, or I just read that Carissa Hendricks had a post on Facebook where, 5 years ago, I sold everything that I owned and hit life on the road. And it's, best decision I've ever made. I was like, that's awesome. But when you don't have that, when you don't have to, again, bring it in every week, and she could go to somebody and say, listen, I know you're not a professional, but how do you see this, right? What's your take on it? I still think that they bring a sense of wonder that isn't that the entire point of Fool Us is, Penn and Teller will say, we like being fooled. And I think the amateur allows in a more conversational way, allows for fooling that can then be worked on. I'm just kind of going around in circles, I think.
Well, I'll take you back to what you said earlier, which is sort of your mantra when it comes to this stuff. We'll just quote Bill Murray from Meatballs. It just doesn't matter.
Just doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, and also, it's like I think the amateur also gets the happy accident. The amateur can come up and say, wouldn't it be funny if? And a professional would be like, it would never occur to them because it's not the planned thing. I remember having a conversation with Matt King, and he was talking about how he made a mistake one night. And this is an amateur thing, but it's just a performance thing where he made a mistake where he wanted somebody to sign the card, but for some reason he hadn't flipped the deck. And so they signed on the back.
Mm.
And he was like, that's brilliant. And he went with it. And then he figured out a way to orchestrate that to happen, to get that laugh moment. But as a professional, you would never do it. And so I think the idea of the amateur comes in who it doesn't matter. So they can come up with wild ideas. They can look at things from unique perspectives and I can bring other things to bear. I come from a theater background. And so if I'm looking at magic, I'm looking at it from a theatrical standpoint or from a storytelling standpoint, not just from a get this card to this position standpoint.
Right.
One last question for you.
Sure.
Where do you see yourself as an amateur in magic headed in the future? What excites you?
Mentalism.
Why?
I sit here, I've got 2 folded billets on my desk because I'm working on Louis Laval's OTT move. Again, it comes back to that original idea of being able to open a deck of cards and entertain for an hour. And so the idea, it still requires dexterity and practice and stuff, but I love the idea of mind reading. I love the idea of that kind of divination, of Eugene used to call bizarre magic, right? That this idea that magic has a deeper meaning, So I keep buying palm reading books and birthday divination thing. So yeah, I love that stuff.
So that's where you're headed.
I think that's where I'm headed. Now again, it becomes really hard to do here because I don't speak Lithuanian. It's really hard to say to somebody, okay, I need you to write it, but can you write it in English for me so that I can, not read it, but divine,
I tell you, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
So I added in a little Bill Murray there because
I love it. And who, not just a little Bill Murray, but an obscure Bill Murray.
Is it
movie.
really obscure?
I think it's obscure.
Oh,
I think
okay.
if most of us said, how many times have you seen the movie Meatballs? A lot of people would look at you like, what? What are you talking about?
Well, it was a big deal when it came out originally.
It really was. I've enjoyed it all my life, and I don't know if you've seen The Way Back.
No, I've never seen that.
Oh, you should, because it's essentially Meatballs, but you get to see what's happening to the kid off screen that has him so confused in life that Bill Murray's got to be his mentor. Sam Rockwell plays the Bill Murray role, and it's worth a watch.
One heck of an actor, that Sam Rockwell.
I like him a lot.
Anyway, the concept of just doesn't matter is something that I think is something I haven't heard somebody say before, but it's one of those things that as soon as you hear it, you go, oh, yeah, absolutely, that's the truth. It's like David Steinberg's expression, Richard Nixon has a face that looks like a foot. As soon as you hear it, you remember it forever. And to have him say it
that's the first time I've heard it.
Well, you'll never forget it. To have him say it just doesn't matter if I'm good or bad. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I pull 10 and teller because it's just for fun. That idea of, as an amateur magician, it is not high stakes. What a great thing to remember. Although as an amateur magician, it is high stakes every time you do it.
Well, yes, because
you have a paying audience. You generally do.
No, it's more than that, though, for me. It's more than that. And I've said this repeatedly on this podcast. I find it nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I don't want to accidentally disparage the art of magic. And so I don't perform a lot of it because it takes a significant amount of effort to get to a place where I'm comfortable showing this to someone. And I just, I don't have the bandwidth anymore. I can't. But yes, I agree that there are the stakes. You can not buy into the premise that if I fail, the world is going to come to an end. And that's the premise I have bought into. So that's a good premise. How about him teaching Max Maven something?
I know how to use PageMaker. I love these little Max Maven things that pop up. It reminded me of when Stan Allen told the story about getting a call from the typesetter for the magazine saying they'd found a mistake in Max's column, and the delight that Stan took in finding a mistake in something Max had done, and just this idea of having to teach Max Maven. It sounds like a premise for a sitcom. Okay, so this week he has to teach Max Maven how to use PageMaker.
I think it's great. It was a great moment to think of it, just to visualize that in my own mind, someone teaching Max anything.
Yeah, I know. I will always have, thanks to you, the memory of just sitting in the lobby of the St. Paul Hotel waiting for everyone else to show up. And I was just sitting here with Max, and I just started talking to him about sushi. And I turned that, I dropped in a quarter, and I got a lovely little essay on how to find the best sushi and where not to go and all that. And he was a teacher. He was a genius. A genius.
Yeah. What the heck were you asking him about sushi? You, who always declare nothing from the sea.
I understand, and I really had no intention of eating sushi. What I wanted to do was have a conversation with Max that wasn't about magic.
Oh, okay.
And had I known his interest in wrestling, I would have gone down that path. Because he had toward the end a huge interest in wrestling, professional wrestling.
Professional wrestling?
Yes, his whole last stuff that he created was based on the idea of, I'll say this wrong, kafabe, which is the shared belief between an audience. Well, you do it all the time, an audience and the performer, that we know this is fake, but for our purposes, it is real. It's Kafabe.
By the premise, by the bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, so I just didn't want to be the guy who asked him, the same thing he's been asked 1,000 times before, and I thought it'd be interesting.
Well,
and
you're
of course,
great.
there's Max Maven, and it was. Anyway, I want to thank Jaq again for spending the time with us. And it was a weird hour when it was like in the middle evening because he was in Lithuania.
Lithuania, for the love of Pete.
I know.
How about that?
That's amazing. Anyway, loved chatting with him, and there are other things we love. I believe you're going to go first and tell us what you love this time around.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I have stumbled on, and I'm sure I'm not going to stump you because you're always 3 ahead of me when it comes to what's out there. But I stumbled on a television show, only 1 season, called American Classic.
Okay.
And it's essentially a combination of Waiting for Guffman and Slings and Arrows. It's charming, especially if you have spent any time at all doing theater. As Kevin Kline, this sort of past his prime Broadway actor who gets a bad review and wigs out at the reviewer in a restaurant, and of course it goes viral.
No regrets.
Were you drunk?
No, I was outraged. I got a terrible review from a critic. No!
The producers are putting you on hiatus. Hello?
Mom's dead. Did she read the review?
And he's forced to retreat to his hometown where his mother has just died, and his mother and father have a festival theater there, which when he was growing up and coming of age, he was the boyhood star doing all of the Hamlets and the Much Ado's, and he goes home and has to stay there, and the theater's in bad shape, and he decides the way to save it is to do a production of Our Town. But instead of, like Thornton Wilder is suggesting, there is no set, there is nothing but a ladder. He wants horses and waterfalls and, the line in there, what's this going to cost? Well, I think it'll pay for itself. Yes, I know. But what's it going to cost? Well, I think, if I did it bare bones, $250,000. $250,000? That's our entire year's budget, which reminded me of Waiting for Guffman when he says, I need $1 million. $1 million? Our entire city budget is $10,000, and that includes the swimming pool. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and I hope there's a second season of it. But it reminds me of, my youth and doing theater in less than ideal circumstances. It's quite charming, and I love Kevin Kline and always have, and I love Laura Linney, and she's great in it. And there's all these little cameos from other great actors that are just kind of floating in there and floating out, and it's very, very charming, very, very charming.
It sounds very charming. Now mine
your
is
turn.
Charming as well, and I was reminded of it because I invoked Osmond's Law at the beginning of this episode.
Right on.
Osmond's Law, for those of you for some reason who skipped the interview, and I don't know what your problem is, Osmond's Law is that when you meet someone for the first time, do not comment on the most obvious thing about them, because he's like 6'8". And but I did that with Jaq because his name's spelled J-A-Q. Anyway, Richard Osman is a television producer and presenter in Great Britain. And kind of right before COVID, he sat down and wrote a mystery novel called The Thursday Murder Club. And since then, he's written 3 or 4 more following that same troupe of senior citizens in a retirement community who solve crimes. They did make a movie out of the first book, which was very nicely cast, but they didn't get the book. They didn't understand the book. And it shouldn't have been a movie. It should have been a series. It should have been 6 episodes where you really get to know these characters. Because that's what it's about. It's a cozy mystery with really interesting senior citizen characters, and it's very funny and very warm, and it's a good mystery, but it's not a complicated mystery, and they screwed up the movie, I think.
Because I've watched the movie. I didn't know it was a book.
I think the books are much, much better. And so I would recommend the entire series. Each one is subtitled Thursday Murder Club. The first one that is the title. And he has written one or two other mysteries that aren't part of that, which were fine, but not as good as the Thursday Murder Club, because it's one of those things where you'll get to know the characters and love their eccentricities and see how they change and how they deal with their situations, some of which are, as elderly people, quite serious. In fact, it has, I think in the third book, a scene that almost made me cry with someone with dementia and dealing with dementia and all that. So it's not serious stuff, but serious stuff happens in it. And I would highly recommend anybody nearby a library, your library is going to have the whole series, because they're they're popular enough that they went out and made a movie out of the first one.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, they could read them in any order, but I'd start at the beginning because they do sort of shift and change throughout. But that's Richard Osman's A Thursday Murder Club.
I will check that out. I saw the movie. I would read the book.
Well, you are a voracious reader, and I think you should throw that first one on your Kindle reader, and I think you will just cruise through it.
I will. Yeah. I do love to read. Oh gosh, yes. I was ready to end, but I got to read a chapter.
You literally have to read a chapter, because
I really do.
Yet. You really do. Last time you read chapter 8 of Twisting the Aces.
Why don't you catch us up?
I'll catch you up as best I can. That was where Detective Diego and Eli were going through Mason Drexel's dressing room, which was really well organized. Everything had the initials MAD on it. At that point, Eli spots the video camera in the back of the theater and explains to Diego that it's a pretty good chance that when Mason Drexel died, that there's a videotape of it. And
right.
Detective Diego said, I need to see that recording. And that takes us right into chapter 9.
Chapter 9. Like an obedient child, I stood on the edge of the stage watching as Detective Diego chatted with Ollie, the night manager. They were standing underneath the video camera I had pointed out in the back of the room. I could hear the mumble of their voices, but not pick out any detail. Apparently, the detective wanted me not so much right at his side, but instead always within his line of sight. From my viewpoint, with full house lights and without the bright show lights in my eyes, it was easy to see the camera lens, light cans, speakers, and dozens of cables that snaked along the pipes across the ceiling and then disappeared into the walls. I guess that was a magic trick of sorts. All the hardware and electronic equipment was hidden right there in plain sight, 10 feet above the audience, shrouded in the cover of darkness and painted automotive matte black. Detective Diego and Ollie headed in my direction. Like a dog trained with an invisible electric fence, I stayed on the stage, leaning forward to pick up pieces of their conversation. No problem, Ollie said, as he moved down the aisle with Diego. We can get that recording for you. All videos are recorded remotely, elsewhere in the building. But if I can beg your indulgence, I'm still dealing with more than 100 guests who have been displaced from this, our main showroom. I need to get them safely situated in other shows or accommodated in our dining room. Ollie took out a handkerchief and wiped his face, clearly flustered by the unexpected events of the evening. Or perhaps it was Detective Diego's no-nonsense, matter-of-fact manner. Ollie glanced over at me. For example, your uncle is currently entertaining in the Hat and Hare, Ollie said. He's also suggested a few more spaces for pop-up shows. He's a true genius at making the impossible possible. I can attest to that, I said. However, that means I must coordinate the lineup of magicians in at least 3 locations at opposite ends of the castle. I quickly calculated what Ollie was up against. The Palace of Mystery was the main showroom. Shows in here lasted 45 minutes and held 130 people. The parlor next door held about 50 people, and the close-up gallery only 25 folks at the max. So how do you distribute and, more importantly, entertain 130 displaced people while still keeping all the other castle gears in motion? I was not envying Ollie's current predicament. So somehow you need to come up with at least 3 to 4 shows, I offered. Actually, 6 to 8 shows, and repeat the performances 3 more times tonight, because it doesn't look like I'll get my palace performance space back anytime soon. Am I right, Detective? That's a fair assumption. Then you will have to excuse me for a few more minutes. I have a lot to accomplish in a short amount of time. I'll meet you in the library. Eli, can you please escort Detective Diego there? Before I could generate a reply, Ollie executed one of his patented half-turns and exited the Palace of Mystery. Detective Diego gestured for me to lead the way. Little did he realize how tenuous was my grasp of the building's geography. But I put on a brave face and semi-confidently led us out of the auditorium. He appears to be a very capable fellow, Detective Diego stated. How well do you know Ollie? Capable is a good description. To be fair, I don't know him all that well. Harry speaks highly of him, which speaks volumes. I see. As we reached the door, I turned back. Prepare yourself for the maze of wonders. How do you mean? It's a phrase I came up with the first time I was here as a teenager. Harry liked it, and it sort of stuck, so he uses it when he gives first-timers a tour. The maze of wonders, Diego repeated quietly. Why a maze? And then he stopped and smiled, for perhaps the first time since we had met. A maze, he said. I see. Well, yes, I agreed, but you'll also find that the Magic Castle appears bigger on the inside than it does on the outside. Some people call it the Big Kids Disneyland. Is it? An official Disney property? No, not at all, I said quickly. But it is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Sort of like Doctor Who's phone box? I smiled. A geeky reference from a truly ungeeky fellow. Yes, like the TARDIS, but more a masterpiece of design and architecture than a time machine. Since the castle is actually built into the hill behind us, the outside can appear smaller than the inside. I realized too late that I was starting to sound like a castle expert. I knew that image would evaporate the moment I made the first of many inevitable wrong turns as I attempted to lead the detective to the library. Was it always a magic venue? Detective Diego asked as we passed the Palace of Mystery bar. No, I said, trying desperately to recall the spiel Harry would deliver when touring the building with guests. It's been a lot of things over the years. Milt Larson, who was a writer for TV shows like Truth or Consequences, opened the Magic Castle in 1963 as a clubhouse for magicians to share tricks and secrets. As we walked, I pointed out the various pictures and props that adorned the walls, only mentioning the ones I was sure of, desperately mimicking some of the trivia I'd heard Uncle Harry share upon my limited visits. While still in tour guide mode, I casually dropped in a question which had been weighing on me. So, since I'm aiding in your investigation and we're headed to the library together, am I still a suspect? Oh, absolutely, he said without missing a beat. Nothing has changed in that regard. I tried not to look as deflated as I felt as we rounded the line of people on our right, waiting to get into the parlor of prestidigitation. We made a hairpin turn to the left for the stairs down to the inner circle. As we hit the stairs, I turned around to make sure Detective Diego was still with me. When I turned back, I ran smack dab into a young woman. Her perfume hit me harder than our minor collision. I recognized it immediately, my brain scrambling, trying to identify the semi-familiar scent. I took a step back And since we each did a double take, the result was my first ever participation in a quadruple take. Eli, is that you? My brain, which had recognized but not identified the scent, suddenly recognized the face and the voice coming out of that face. I hadn't seen her in forever. Cecilia? Yes, OMG! What had moments before been an awkward collision morphed immediately into a purposeful, full-body hug on the small landing alcove at the top of the stairs. Cecilia was, well, not my first girlfriend, but a girl I had had a serious crush on way back in junior high. Then she moved to California, and I barely saw her, but she had definitely made a lasting impression. In unison, we asked, "What are you doing here?" I gestured for her to go first. "I've been doing cruise ships for ever, 20 years. It's a great gig, but I'm ready to settle down on land for a while. I've been back in L.A. since the start of the year. Finally got my land legs back. Are you here with Harry?" Yes, just a quick trip." I heard a cough from behind me and turned, suddenly remembering that I was a suspect in a murder investigation, squiring the lead investigator to review crime scene footage. "Oh, I'm sorry. This is—" I paused a second, wondering what was the best way to introduce my sentinel. "Cecilia, this is Detective Diego." I turned to him. "Detective, this is my old magic pal, Cecilia Hernandez." "It's very nice to meet you," he said, introducing himself, and unless it was my imagination, turning up the dial on his charm at the same time. "We're just headed to the library," I said. "I'm just coming from there." "Hey, did you hear the news about Mason?" Yes. I was planning on seeing his show tonight, but got waylaid. He and I worked on a couple of high-end cruises together back in the day. 3 words about Mason: amazing. That's more like 3 syllables, I teased her. I noticed a couple of guests coming up the stairs behind her. I gestured for us to squeeze to the side and let them pass. "I can't believe he's dead," she continued. "And I can't believe he actually died on stage. Leave it to Mason to put a better spin on Doc Daly dying after performing his famous card trick. Technically, Daly died after performing Vernon's The Travelers and his cavorting aces." She grinned at me. "Leave it to Harry Mark's talented nephew to correct me on arcane details in magic history." I can't help myself. "Anyway, I heard Mason died while performing a trick. That poor volunteer will have the story to end all stories." Detective Diego and I exchanged a quick look. "Yeah, that's for darn sure," I said quietly. Surprisingly, Detective Diego chose that moment to jump in with a question. "Did you hear that Mason Drexel had planned to burn all his tricks? What do you make of that?" Cecilia didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, I heard that too. We were just discussing that downstairs. I can't believe he'd really do that. He did an amazing card trick with the 4 of hearts on the cruise ship that I'd kill to learn how it was done." She glanced at her watch, then behind her at a large group of people coming up the stairs, probably exiting the Peller Theater and headed directly for us. This group didn't strike me as the squeeze-by type. "Look, hey, I got a dash. Ollie asked me to do a pop-up impromptu show in the museum next to the Hat and Hare. Apparently, this whole Mason dying thing has thrown a huge wrench into the otherwise finely tuned castle machinations," she said, adding a sarcastic spin to her last words. "How about we catch up later tonight?" "Sounds great. See ya." And she was gone. Detective Diego and I backed up a few steps and let the parade of people pass by, then proceeded down the empty staircase towards our final destination. I was moving purely by instinct, fearful that I would become hopelessly lost the moment I thought about where I was. On the ground floor, We walked past the display case hallway, which opened onto another enchanted level, the inner circle. From behind me, I heard Detective Diego. "A maze of wonders indeed." I kept moving, faking confidence the entire time. The Peller Theater was to our left. In the center, a dance floor and dining tables. On our right, the library bar, better known as the Hello Dolly bar from Harry's generation. On the other side of the dance floor was the bookshelf performance impromptu table, then the classroom, and finally, our actual destination, the library. We came to a stop at the velvet ropes barring civilians from entering the legerdemain library. "Well, I guess there's no way to get past this clever restrictive device," I joked. Detective Diego responded to my alleged humor by unclasping the end of the rope and gesturing for me to pass through the entryway into the library.
All right, so Jim, you never went into the library the one time you were at the castle, did you?
I don't think I did. No, I really did try to get into everything, but I don't remember being in the library.
Well, as a non-member, you might not have been able to get in.
Yeah, that might be true too. Yeah, I don't recall being in the library, although I did try to, as I say, get everywhere because I knew it would be a while before I got back. But I have no memory of being in the library.
I think you might remember it, and that'll that room becomes important as the story goes on. It also, this is now book 10. This is the first time in a grown-up book that Cecilia has shown up, and in fact, I think even been mentioned. She was a childhood friend of Eli's, and she appears as the best magician throughout the middle grade book, The Curious Mysteries of Eli Marks. And then she moves to Los Angeles at the end of that book. So it was fun to have a grown-up Cecilia have her return to the series.
Layers and layers and layers, folks.
It's like an onion. It's like an onion.
It really is.
And I will just have to shout out to our friend Michael Varma. Eli's passage throughout all of the Magic Castle and how he gets from point A to point B and all that. None of that would have happened if Michael hadn't been very stringent about, nope, there's a stairway there. Nope, there's a door there. Nope, you can't get from there to there. You got to go through there. That just doesn't happen without that sort of keen insight, which I don't have, and he does. And that's why I'm happy with the result, because it is, I think, as accurate as any of the other books when it comes to the world that it's trying to create. So thank you again.
That's one of the great joys of this series for me, is that you take such care of that kind of stuff, where most of us, myself included, might go, who's going to know?
You know who's going to know?
Yeah.
Teller, and he's going to send me an email. You know who's going to know? Lance is going to know.
Yeah.
And he's going to send me an email. So
this is better. It's better your way. There, I've said it. Are you happy?
Yeah. All right, that's it for episode 609. Next time we're listening to chapter 10, assuming you've recorded it by then. Otherwise, we will just have about 30 minutes of a hum. Boom.
No. I'll get to it. I really will get to it.
And in that episode, we'll also have an interview from Michael Varma with one of the junior society members, a guy named Ashton Ardenti, who is charming.
That's a great name.
Yeah, it is a great name. I know I've told this joke before on the show, but it was one of my favorite jokes of all time by Dean Johnson, a local comedian here. This joke is probably 40 years old, where Dean would be on stage and he would say, I got to be honest, Dean Johnson is not my real name. When I decided to become a comedian, I needed a more flashy name, so I changed my name. My stage name is Dean Johnson. My real name is Raul Del Monaco. Is that, or is that not a great joke?
Well, it is a great joke, and even though it's 40 years old, there's no such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it before.
That's true. That's how we lived our life. Anyway, That's it for this time. We'll see you next time. It was 610 with chapter 10 of Twisting the Aces, and a great conversation about the Junior Society, thanks to Michael Varma. Until then,
be kind to each other, everybody.
This has been Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and Jim Cunningham. Produced by Albertsbridge Books at Grass Lake Studios. Find this podcast and all the books in the Eli Marks series at EliMarksMysteries.com. That's ELIMARKS Mysteries.com. And thanks for listening.
Free audio post-production by Alphonic.com.